What's up, guys? We've had quite a few mental health advocates on Hot Mess Espresso. Obviously, it's a mental health podcast. Come on. But we haven't had a provider yet and somebody that is on both sides of it. What's up, Gina?
Hi,
How
thanks for
are you?
having me. I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, no, thanks for coming on. I'm so glad I found you on the Facebook page
Me
randomly.
too.
We love a good mill spouse page. Sometimes they're actually effective and not drama centered.
Sometimes, yeah.
So you're a therapist. You run your
hmm
own practice, right?
hmm
So what got you into becoming a therapist? Because I feel like that's a very big decision.
Yes, I mean money wise and all the other things.
Literally.
But I feel like I don't have one of those. I've always wanted to like help people stories.
Right.
When I was in undergrad, I was actually in like a pre-med track,
hmm
and was gonna go into nursing school after I decided like I like people too much to be a doctor,
Mm.
and had like some issues with credits transferring and whatnot. So I ended up like getting a social services degree instead, and was like, okay, cool. Like I really still want to be a nurse. So I was going to do an accelerated master's program, and I had to take the GRE for that.
Mm.
And I literally had such bad test anxiety, and have just always been a bad test taker in
Right.
general. Like, couldn't focus, all of those things that I did not show up for my GRE appointment. Um, and that was kind of a wake up call. So I got on Google and I Googled what master's degrees can you get without taking the GRE. So here I am. That's how I became a therapist.
Hey,
Uh,
it works.
it does work, and I'm happy that I'm here. But I think that I was probably a really bad test taker because I found out later in life that I have ADHD, which is my
Mm.
client focus in my practice too. So that explains a lot. Um,
That's what I
Finding
was gonna
that
ask. Like,
now.
yeah, that's what I was gonna ask. What like your niche is ADHD, or are there other niches that you work with, or
Yes. So my practice as a whole, we function more as a group practice. So since I
right?
opened, I brought on a co-owner because it's way too much to do for one person, and especially one person that has ADHD. So I have
hmm
a co-owner now when we're hiring and all that fun stuff. And our focus, like by population, is people in high stress careers. So that captures teachers. We see a lot of medical professionals, pilots, military. We're both really connected to the firefighter communities where we live. So a lot of those folks come in. And then my co owner, she has a trauma focus. So she'll see more of the folks that come in for trauma. And that's really what she enjoys. And mine is late diagnosed and undiagnosed ADHD in those kind of professional careers.
Yeah, that's
But
definitely got to be interesting to kind of pick apart and oh, see, you do this, that explains this, and that kind of thing.
yes. Yeah, I feel like I see like two very distinct groups,
hmm
um, like within the ADHD diagnoses too, and it like explains the populations as well. Like you have the academics who are the high achieving perfectionists, and those were like the teachers and the academics and the surgeons. And then we have like the ADHDers who said, fuck school, I'm not doing that. And those are more like the hands on, like your first responder types or military. So it's interesting to see that play out as well.
Yeah, that definitely is. Yeah, because I was definitely the high achieving through high school, burned out in college, ADHD.
Too.
That's very hands on. If you give me verbal instructions, I'll be like, what? And then that's it. Like if I can read them or I'm being shown them, I'm such a quick learner. But verbal instructions, like it's like just
Oh
done.
yeah. I can't
Absolutely
handle verbal information. Like if there's a training that I have to go through for my CEUs or something, and they don't give me handouts with pictures to follow along or like videos to reference later, oh, that's difficult.
Yeah, no kidding. So how do you take care of yourself, especially after, a long day of seeing clients, and I know you're not trauma focused, so I know a lot of your clients aren't necessarily, you know, trauma dumping, for lack of a better term, but how do you recharge and take care of yourself after listening to, you know, client after client after client, and then you get home and so how do you take care of yourself?
The beauty of being in the private practice setting is that I don't work a 9 to 5, and I have a lot of flexibility with what I do. So my current schedule, I'm off every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, or sorry, every Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, and half of Fridays. And that's really nice because I can spend that time like making plans with other people, or spending like a weekend with my spouse and my dogs. And it's just nice to not be bound to the confines of a 9 to 5, I guess, if you will. So like a short day trip or a weekend trip, and being able to at least have the ability to kind of have very set hours, which aren't very many of them during the week, is really helpful. And I'm also really connected to my therapist community, still back in Washington where I started my business, and then here in Vegas as well. And I think that just like having the shared experiences that I can talk about with other therapists, either in a formal, informal setting, is really helpful.
Oh, absolutely. Now, to circle back, I lost my train of thought for a second. The ADHD is ADHD-ing today. Did you always start in private practice, or did you always start in private?
Have I always been in private practice?
Yeah, have you always been in private practice, or did you kind of do the whole like state hospital, or, you know, that kind of thing, and then went whoop?
This is very new still. I've been doing this for a little over a year. So I worked in a prison for like 4.5 years, and that's kind of where I learned therapy. So a men's prison in Eastern Washington, but I loved it. That was a really fun job. And I think that if the military hadn't sent us elsewhere, I would probably still be doing that.
I mean, it seems like a very rewarding job. It sounds like it can be very stressful, but also very, very rewarding. I can't talk today.
I mean, I think you said you've been at this for quite a while today too, though. So.
Yeah. I've changed my shirt multiple times, so it doesn't look like I did like 4 episodes in a row. Because these are all obviously like videos, so it's like, so.
Yeah, it was a really fun environment, and a lot of prison-based work, whether it's therapy or whether like it's support group based, any kind of like growth and development kind of work in prison is groups, and I love groups. So I got the opportunity to do group therapy there. And a lot of therapists will go through their career without doing groups, and that sucks because they're so fun.
Yeah, I've been in groups, like with my own therapy journey. I did DBT groups and anxiety groups, and let me tell you, even when nobody wants to share, just being in a room among people that you know are struggling with something similar to you, you're just like, okay, this makes me feel better. Because when you're sitting like opposite your therapist, you're just like, I'm definitely the only one dealing with this. And then when you're in a group, you're like, no, I'm not. Like, it's fine. There's a little bit of validation and a little bit of like a virtual, like, you know, shoulder pat, like, it's gonna be okay.
Totally. And like in an open group setting where not everyone like starts and stops at the same time, like people get to step up and be the leader throughout the course of their therapy journey, and you get to see that growth. And I think like one of the most beautiful things about group therapy too is that I'm not the only one that gets to witness the progress that somebody's making. There's a whole room of people that get to see that, and I think that's really cool.
No, I love that. And were they always like pretty encouraging with each other about opening up and, you know, making progress? Or yeah, I didn't think so.
My more like specialized group was the more antisocial group. And I think like in like day-to-day life, we think antisocial, like not wanting to go outside and talk to people.
Yeah, no.
But antisocial, like personality disorder, that's a whole different ball game. So they're
It is.
not social. They're
Yeah.
holding each other accountable by like swearing at one another. So growth and encouragement looks a little different in that group.
Right.
But still, I enjoyed that group a lot. It was fun and challenging. Like I think I learned a lot as a young therapist.
I'm sure.
And it was challenged in ways that I'm really thankful for.
Absolutely. I'm sure. That does sound like a fun job overall though. So, but to circle back, you had said the military. Obviously, I mean, it's no surprise to the two of us that we're both military spouses. We had a whole conversation about it. So, one of the more fun parts of the military is TRICARE.
Oh,
and it's so fun. It's so fun. Oh my God. I don't have like the worst problem with it, but also like trying to find a therapist that takes TRICARE, because you know as well as I do, mental health in this country is not taken nearly as seriously as it should. It is more of a privilege and basically a financial privilege for a lot of people, because trying to jump through hoops on, insurances, and then all of a sudden your therapist doesn't take your insurance anymore. Your therapist moves into private practice. So if you have state insurance, you're SOL. And, that's kind of what happened to me. And thankfully, like, we can pay for it out of pocket, but not everybody can afford like 100 and 120 a session. So, why, especially in the military, why the hell is mental health like treatment so freaking hard to access with TRICARE?
That is a fantastic question.
I know. I can't wait to dive into this.
Yes. So I sent you an article.
Right.
And I think you mentioned that you're going to like link it or something.
Yep. It's definitely going to get linked. And then I'm going to keep up with updates and like update my Facebook group and stuff like that, because I think it's something that we should keep talking about.
So some of my Seattle area therapist colleagues participated in an article for the Seattle Times that actually came out really recently. So like the timing of this article and the episode is perfect.
Right.
Insurance has not kept up with the cost of living.
Nope.
At all. So I have the, I guess, unique perspective, like we said at the beginning of the episode, of being both on the provider and the patient side. Like I've looked for a therapist when I had TRICARE before I was in private practice, and had the same questions as a lot of people, like, why can't I find a therapist that accepts my insurance? And a lot of it comes down to how much these insurance companies are paying. So think about how much your monthly expenses cost, like your rent, your groceries. I'm sure that they've increased a lot in the last year, 6 months, couple years. Maybe if you've bought a house in the last year and a half, your mortgage is really expensive because it's got an expensive interest rate. So life is expensive, and insurance, most of them have not raised their rates in several years. Or like a therapist that joined private practice or started their practice maybe 6 or 7 years ago is still getting the same rate back then. And that's a lot of life that has been lived, and a lot of expenses, like including your office rent outside of your home rent or your mortgage, that go up every year. So a lot of it does come down to cost. And TRICARE in particular doesn't have a great reputation among therapists or other providers, whether it's like your rheumatologist or your primary care physician, whoever. It doesn't have a great reputation for a lot of reasons, and one of those is the cost. What some of these big insurance companies have done, like United, Aetna, Blue Cross Blue Shield, they write it in their contract that therapists aren't allowed to discuss rates with one another. So before you sign those contracts, you can't talk to your colleagues and say, okay, how much is United paying you? So you don't really know what you're getting yourself into.
That's so sketchy.
It is sketchy. Yeah, it's like going to interview for a job, accepting the job, and not really knowing the salary or how poorly the employer might treat you.
Yeah.
TRICARE does not have that in their contracts,
Mm-hmm.
and like you or I or anyone can look up what they're paying for any of these session codes. So I am allowed to share like what they pay per session.
Right.
And they're on the lower end.
Of course.
A lot of therapists will do like the question of full time in private practice. It depends on who you ask. If you
Mm-hmm.
ask somebody that came from a community mental health setting, those folks are doing, because they did so many sessions in community mental health, maybe like 20 to 25 sessions per week. That's too many for me. I
Yeah.
average anywhere between like 13 to 16, and that's like my kind of comfortable area. But going back to the TRICARE rates, I'm just going to share those with you because it is public.
Yeah, I
Let
think we need to know. Like, I think it's just, we're not going to be able to fully talk about it unless we like fully know, and like that's how we start changing things.
For sure, yeah. So, let's say that, actually, yeah, just the rates. So there's Nevada across the board has all one rate for a 60-minute session. So that kind of
Mm-hmm.
like 55 to 60-minute range. And then Washington has a rate for everything but Seattle. And then Seattle has its own rate. So for Seattle, that dollar amount per hour is $118.21. And then the rest of Washington is 110.75. And then in Nevada, it's also 110.75. But those aren't W-2 rates. Those are 1099. Like you're paying your own
Oh my
taxes.
God. Yeah. So you're
So,
paying taxes on, oh God. Yeah. Cause I'm
um,
just thinking like those rates aren't terrible, but
so
yeah, if you're having
after
to factor in,
yeah, after taxes, that's that 110 is $77. Um,
oh,
and I've got it broken down like a little bit further too.
mm-hmm.
Let's
Yeah.
say I filled my entire caseload with TRICARE clients.
Mm-hmm.
Um, in Nevada, like I saw all of my TRICARE clients in person in Nevada, and I did 18 sessions per week, so quite a bit more that I'm doing right
Yeah.
now. Um, that would be after taxes, 13.95 and a few cents per week, or 55.81.80 per month. My expenses, like my office,
Mm-hmm.
is around 1,400 per month. So like I have to pay for my own phone, my fax service that I need to communicate with insurance, my health record system, all of those expenses
Right.
comes out to about $1,400. So 55.81 minus my expenses if I was doing 18 sessions, that comes out to 41.81.
Right.
My actual number of sessions, let's say there's 14 per week. So 77 times 14 equals 1078 times 4, 4312 minus 1400. So that leaves me with 2912.
To cover all of your household expenses, which is not happening in this economy.
Right. And that's if everyone actually shows up to their appointment too.
Yeah. Yeah, because if you think
So
about it, the average rental cost is between like 1,800 and $2,000 a month. So $900 to cover your car. Your no,
right.
no,
It's not realistic.
no, not at all.
And then the other problem is, so I've submitted all of my claims on time for January. I'm in the habit of submitting my claims either the day of or the next day, or
Right.
be on top of that. Because I don't want to be the reason why I'm getting paid late, but I haven't been paid yet for any January sessions.
Okay, so for
So,
context, guys, it is January 27th.
Mm-hmm.
That is ridiculous.
Right. So if I had a whole caseload of TRICARE clients, I would not have any money right
Yeah, no
now.
kidding. Because I was just thinking, so you have to basically wait to get paid.
Yeah.
So no wonder they don't. There's so many therapists that just don't want to deal with insurance because they have to pay their bills too.
Mm-hmm.
Like it makes so much sense, but it's still just so frustrating because why is it like this?
Yeah. Yeah. And like some therapists will do, like, you're supposed to, um, ethically and per your contract, if somebody approaches you and said, will you take me on as a client, and you're qualified to take them, like, ethically and per your contract, you're supposed to say yes if you have an opening.
Right.
Um, but it's so hard to justify that, like with all of these problems and like needing to take care of your expenses.
Yeah.
I couldn't afford to take on more than a few TRICARE spots, and that's about, what I have right now. I think about a quarter of my spots are TRICARE right now, and that's all I can do. That's all I can afford to take on.
And that's got to be kind of frustrating knowing that like spouses in military definitely need the mental health help, but you're stuck between a rock and a hard place almost.
Yeah.
Like just stuck having to be like, nope, sorry, can't because like you have to put yourself first.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And for my own therapy, I pay out of pocket.
Mm,
Um, so, like you mentioned, you've had to do the same thing.
yep.
And like, it's that's difficult to do too. I know not
It
everyone
is.
can afford to do that.
Yeah.
Um, and it's hard to tell TRICARE families, like, because I have the luxury of being able to do that. It's difficult to
Right.
tell families like who I know aren't able to do that. I have referrals. Some of them might have openings, maybe at $50 a session. Some people still can't pay $50 a session.
No. Because if you think about it, like if you're just starting out with therapy, you need to go every week, especially when you're unpacking a bunch of stuff and this, that, and the other thing. I've managed to either go like once a month just to kind of check in with my therapist or going every 2 weeks when I'm like not great, where I know I can handle it, but I know like I have a borderline spiral coming on or like an episode and I'm just like, why don't we just like handle this before it becomes a problem? But
Or,
then if it's like, just for full transparency, $100 to $120 a session twice a month, or if you're going every week, that's a $400 to $500 a month. That's a car payment.
yeah,
So
yeah.
you're going into it like, do I get my head screwed on straight or do I pay my car? And it shouldn't have to
Nobody's
be like
happy
that.
with those decisions.
Yeah, it
And a
is
shitty thing about
ridiculous.
TRICARE too is that, unlike some of the other insurance companies, where if you can't find a provider that accepts your insurance for whatever reason, a lot of those other large insurance companies like United, Aetna, Blue Cross Blue Shield, they'll reimburse you for your sessions.
Mm-hmm.
TRICARE, doesn't do that. Or like the kind of way that they have that set up ish is that your therapist still has to sign some contracts with them.
Yep.
And like, you're not going to get a therapist to do that for the same reasons that they don't want to join their insurance panels.
Yeah,
So
no.
you are like out 100% of that money. Whereas with the larger companies, you might only be out 80% of that money, 70% of that money. So this particular issue, I think, hits military families really hard.
Yeah, and like to kind of point out a little bit, there was a bill that was passed a couple of years ago that said that, military families and stuff didn't have to go strictly to military hospitals. They didn't have to go straight through the VA for stuff. Like veterans and the like could access their care wherever they wanted and they weren't going to get restricted, but you still have these issues with the insurance companies. So
Yes.
in theory, that bill was great. Practically applied, it's kind of shit. Like it just is.
Yeah, like of course I can't like share personal stories
Right.
from clients, but wait times for active duty to get referred to me have been up to 3.5 months just for a PCM to write a piece of
Oh
paper.
my God.
And that's not okay either.
No, it's not. Like mm, I could go on for like ever about how frustrating it is just because, I deal with my own mental health issues and it doesn't help when the military is thrown at you and, I'm sure you know that your ADHD just thrives on the lack of routine that is the military.
Oh, for sure.
So, because my husband's in the guard and, we literally just had a storm in Buffalo and it was 2 days before this New York City trip that we'd planned. And I spent 2 hours going, are you going with me or am I making my sister go? Because are you going to get spun up for this like blizzard to go shovel? And it was just like, that level of anxiety 24/7. I have to be in therapy for that because I have to learn how to cope with it. And that's not
Hmm.
even like the spouses that are dealing with, deployed spouses that don't come back the same or, shitty leadership that they're trying to deal with, or even the active duty that goes through the things that they do. So it's just, it's frustrating.
It's so frustrating. And yeah, my heart hurts so much for
Yeah.
the people who aren't getting the support that they need.
Well, because you're in
Um,
the thick of it, like seeing all of it, like because you're an active duty spouse, correct?
mhm.
Yeah. So you are right in the middle of it, like seeing it all and being like, eh, there's only so much I can do.
Right, right. For active duty folks, my spouse said that I shouldn't advertise this, but he's not here. But
He can't
for
tell me what to do.
yes, he's literally not here, gone for 3 months. So
We love
for
that.
folks who are struggling to get a referral, um, you also have the option to pay cash and not tell the military or tell TRICARE or get them involved. And
Yeah.
I have had active duty folks reach out for support to on how to navigate that.
Hmm.
And I am always happy to support either if I have an opening myself, like for cash pay or reduced rate, or to make a referral to a colleague who can see somebody cash pay, if that is an option, if somebody can afford that, or like negotiate a lower rate, um, because waiting for 3 months just to get a referral isn't an
Yeah.
option.
No.
And yeah, active duty, like you can go off base and pay cash for your therapy, and you can always ask your therapist not to put a diagnosis on file. So that is always an option.
I'm seeing more and more therapists not putting diagnoses on file for the sheer fact that we can get very caught up in labels.
Yeah.
Like when I got diagnosed with borderline, I just happened to see my discharge paperwork like actually 3 months after I'd gotten the formal diagnosis because my
Mhm.
therapist at the time was like, this technically defines you, but it doesn't define you. And, telling you, I'm officially diagnosing you with this when we already know, we're pretty sure that's what you have. Like, you don't need to hear that on top of it
Mhm.
because, and there's several reasons why you don't put diagnoses on, but I'm seeing more and more like therapists, especially like I've talked to my therapist and we've had conversations where they only put one on for like coding
For
purposes or because they absolutely have to for like accommodations or something like that. But for the most part, especially my therapist is very much like, I just want to treat what's going on with you right now and not treat what the label says.
yeah, I completely agree with that. The big reason that we diagnose anyways, well, two reasons. One, if a client wants that and if having that label is validating and supportive
Mm-hmm.
to a client, and two, for insurance.
Right.
If that label is not going to be helpful or useful in treatment and a client has goals that don't necessarily align with a particular diagnosis, if you're not billing insurance, you never have to put that label on there.
Yeah. Because it's just sometimes labels do more harm than good. Sometimes it's freeing for a lot of people to be like, oh, this is what I have. This makes sense. But at the same time, a lot of the times it's not as freeing and validating as you would think it would be.
Right.
Because, yeah, I have ADHD. Slapping the label on did, like, it explained a lot for me, but at the same time, like, it didn't do much except let me get an Adderall prescription for a few months that just didn't work for me. So now we're on natural supplements, and I'm just like, just a millennial that's distracted and has a tough time getting my to-do list done, which is what I'm finding 90% of millennials are dealing with. So at the same time, being like, I have ADHD, it means something, but it also doesn't at the same time. You know?
In my process with clients, especially my insurance-based clients, because insurance is so demanding, and they need a diagnosis or they want that diagnosis, I'm personally very transparent about what I'm putting in someone's medical file, because it is your file and it is
Absolutely
going in there. So anytime I add a label, change a label, anything like that, I have a conversation with a client, and we can do like kind of the same thing that you were describing with a process your therapist has been through. Like maybe there's a couple things and we put one, but if it's going in there for any like billing purposes, or if it's going to be in there purposely, then I want to have a conversation with a client about that to make sure they're okay with it.
Yeah, I mean, transparency is everything, especially when you're dealing with different mental illnesses and mental health issues. Like, being fully transparent probably helps to bridge more trust.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Because
oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, you're fine. You're fine. You're totally fine.
I was just going to say, I might work with someone who I believe has, say, a PTSD diagnosis, and they don't want that in their record. Then they don't have to have that in their record, and we might choose to then, moving forward, not work under insurance. And all of those options are okay. And I think it's important to educate our clients about what the options are. Like, it's not just insurance or nothing.
Absolutely. Abso-freaking-lutely. Now, the article that we were talking about, people are trying to make some changes.
Yes.
What are those changes? Because I'm very excited about this. But
so Seattle, where the cost of living is very high, a lot of therapists have moved away from accepting insurance altogether.
Right.
Have moved away or have moved to cash pay practice, which is great for the therapists because we can afford our bills. But it creates some challenges for clients who don't have the ability to pay for their sessions up front. So it's nice because for the clients who are getting that reimbursement back, like I mentioned before, you can still sometimes get 80% or 100% of that money back. But if you can't pay that up front, that's hard. And not all insurance plans offer that.
Right.
So in Washington, there are a couple of bills, a House bill and a Senate bill, trying to be pushed forward through these legislative sessions that will force insurance companies to implement mandatory cost of living raises every year. And I think that's really fantastic. I'm going to cough.
You're totally fine.
Excuse me.
Oh, you're fine.
Because late payment issues and that kind of bullshit aside, if a therapist can afford their bills based on what they're being paid hourly, and if there's maybe a $20 difference or a $30 difference between what they're getting paid versus a $50, $60, $70, $80 difference, they're going to be more inclined to work with insurance and accept their flaws, which really increases access to care on the client end. So I think that bills like this are so important. And I would love to see these go through and get passed. And I think that if that happens, or I hope that if that happens, other states would follow suit.
Yeah. So you may know this, you may not know this. And if you don't know this, I'll look it up and blah, blah, blah. But Is this something that people can be getting, if you live in Washington, this is something that people can be getting a hold of their congressperson and showing support for it, or their representative? Because you said it's in both, right? The House and
Yes.
the Senate. Okay, so yeah, if you live in the state of Washington, I would be figuring out who your senators are and who your representatives are in your district and calling the hell out of them. Just now,
There's
do you know off the top of your head what the bill is? Because I can just look it up if not, like what it's called, the HB whatever.
Yes, I think I put the House bill in my email to you. Um,
Yes.
and one of my colleagues in like one of our networking groups put like a really simple step-by-step guide to how to support, and it was just like a couple of check boxes on the Washington legislative website. So it was super easy to like go in and show support, and you can add comments as well.
Yeah, because I'm pulling up. Yep, it's House Bill 1655. So if you are in the state of Washington, call your representatives and tell them to support House Bill 1655. I know I'm going to be trying to figure out if there's anything in New York that's similar to that, because holy shit, does New York need better
And
access to mental health.
and it's Senate Bill 6161.
Senate Bill 6161. So both of those guys, if you live in the state of Washington, I have friends that I know live in the state of Washington, and I'm definitely getting on the phone with them later and being like, hey, call your representative. Like, we need this, you know?
I mean, yeah, it's an election year. So even if you're not in Washington and you're personally impacted by the TRICARE issue, like if you can't find a therapist near where you live, if you're near a base where you're not getting health care, like other specialty care where you need, tell your Congress people and make them aware of what's going on.
Exactly.
Because they may or may not know, and they want your vote.
They do.
So let them know how they can get it.
Well, and this is how things start,
Mm-hmm.
is by people saying, hey, this is a problem. How do we fix it? And you would hope that our elected officials would give a shit enough. We all know half of them don't, but we would hope that some of them give a shit enough to like do something about this.
Mm-hmm.
And I know it's not like top priority for some of them, but it may be a big, big thing for others, you know? So
Yeah.
I definitely, God, I'm going to keep up with this and like keep everybody updated on the Facebook group and my Instagram to let you all know how this turns out. Hopefully it's not dead in the water on the floor. Hopefully it actually gets passed. At least one of them gets passed, because that would be very nice. That'd be a huge win for mental health advocacy.
It
A freaking huge
it
win.
would be, yeah, it would be huge. I mean, it really sometimes only takes one thing like this, and other states follow suit. Um,
Absolutely.
Within like the different mental health care licensees, like that's often how we see things
Hmm.
happen. Like one state will reduce their licensure requirements, and other states will say, okay, we'll do the same. So insurance, of course, is a much more complicated issue.
Yeah.
But it doesn't hurt to hope,
It doesn't hurt to hope, and it doesn't hurt to make a couple phone calls and send an email or two.
for sure.
For
Or
sure.
30.
Yeah, or 30, maybe 35. Like, just, so what's that about the squeaky wheel? Like, that gets the
Exactly.
grease or whatever our grandparents used to say. So one more question before we go, and it's kind of a random question, but so with you being a therapist, do you actually tell people when they're like, so what do? Do you just say you work in mental health, or do you say you're a therapist? And how do you keep up the boundary when people want to just trauma dump on you?
I do tell people I'm a therapist, and sometimes you get like the trauma dump, or sometimes you get like the fearful, are you going to diagnose me? And my response is
I would hate
usually,
that question
oh
so
no,
much.
I charge a lot of money for that, so I'm not doing it for free.
I love. Yeah, no, I'm not diagnosing you for free. That's going to be like 120 per session.
Well, I'm still licensed in Washington, so it's 170.
Holy. And I thought New York was
What it takes to
expensive.
live there.
No, what? Yeah, because now, okay, now that makes so much sense when you were like saying the rates for TRICARE and stuff. Because I'm like, 118, that's about like what New York. Okay, never mind. If this therapy isn't, no kidding, nobody wants to take insurance. Oh my God.
Yeah, I've raised my rates quite a bit within the last year.
Yeah,
I mean, I my family PCSed a year ago, and we had to buy a house, and
yeah.
it is not cheap. So my life is expensive. I
No,
mean, this
especially
is
where you live.
a bunch of money. Yeah, exactly. This isn't about making a bunch of money. It's just paying my
No,
bills.
literally. And I'm really, really glad you came on and like broke it down because I've always wondered why therapy was so expensive. Now I know.
Yeah.
Because yeah, especially running your own, like you do have all of those. And I mean, I run my own business with the podcast, and I had an aesthetic studio for a while, so I know that all of those little like $20 a month here, $30 a month there, that all adds up. So I
Totally.
know it can be like obnoxiously expensive, but I'm so glad that you broke that down so that people can understand why it's so expensive, but also irritating because it's so expensive and it's still not accessible. So hopefully this episode and the bill that's on the floor just freaking starts moving things in a different direction. Like, please, please,
Yes,
please, we need it. This
we
it's
do.
not to talk about our feelings, it's to actually become better functioning human beings, unpack our shit, and just do better and be better.
Yes. Yeah. Because I know we're coming up on our time, but I really believe
Okay.
therapy is and should be a preventative thing. I view it kind of
Exactly.
like exercise,
Yeah.
um, or like eating to support longevity. You wouldn't start doing either of those things when your doctor tells you that you need gastric bypass surgery.
Mm-hmm.
You would do those things as preventative measures. And a lot of people are waiting to go to therapy until they're at that gastric bypass stage when so many of us would benefit when we could just be at that eating regularly and going on a walk stage.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the other thing too. Insurances will pay for your gym membership, but they won't pay for your therapy.
Yeah.
Like mental
Yeah.
health is just as important as your physical health. They're
And
one
there's
and the
no
same. They go
preventative
together.
diagnosis, so insurance won't pay for preventative.
It's so irritating.
I
But
know.
I am so, so glad that we ran into each other. I don't
Me
remember
too.
which page it was, but it wasn't the notorious spouse page, so it doesn't matter.
Yes.
But yeah, so I am so glad we ran into each other. I'm so glad that you wanted to come on. I'm so glad that we had this conversation. This
Thank you so
is
much for having
yeah,
me. This was fun.
this was. So yeah, thanks so much.
Yeah, I can't wait to see the episode. Thanks,
Me
Heather.
either.